Hi, I'm Christian Schalk, an AppSheet product manager, and today I'll be stepping through a workshop on how to use AppSheet's new AppScript connector. So let's get started. Okay, to get started with the workshop, what we're going to do is I'm going to create a new project in the AppScript environment. So click on New Project, and incidentally, this will be the project that we're going to be calling from AppSheet. All right. So I'm going to give my project a simple name like Hello World, and let's go ahead and add some code into the project. So I'm going to add this function here called log this. It takes a single parameter, which is a message, and then it just dumps it to the log where it says message from AppSheet was, etc. All right. So this is a very, very simple project, but I'm going to now switch over to AppSheet and build an application with an automation that can actually call this function, and it will also pass on a message to it. All right. So to build an application in AppSheet, the easiest way is for me to start with a simple spreadsheet, right? And so here's a spreadsheet which contains a lot of different data points for ordering t-shirts, for example. Just so happens that I can click on extensions and then AppSheet and then create an app. All right. So I'll click create an app. And then now that's setting up a new application based off of the data that was in that spreadsheet. All right. So in a few seconds, the app is going to render. So this is actually the application in a kind of a preview format. So I'm going to now click on Customize, so I can then go in and start doing updates to the application. So on the right, we can see the preview of the app. If I want to click on a record, so this is the exact same data that we were looking at in the spreadsheet, but now I can go through and change things. So for example, I have these nice drop-down options. I can change the color of an order of a t-shirt and such. So it's basically a fully functional app in this case. Now, what I'm going to do now is create what's known as an automation. And the automation is essentially a way for me to trigger a workflow based off of a certain event or events, right? And then I can assign it a task to do something based on that event. So in my case, I want to create a new bot such that whenever a record is changed, I want to call, in this new example, I want it to call an AppScript function. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. So I click on New Bot, and I look down here and I can see some of the suggestions. And this first one is actually perfectly usable. So when a copy of the t-shirt orders example record is created or updated, in this case, it's going to send a notification. In our case, we just want to update that to actually call an AppScript function, right? So here's the step where it sends a notification, and that would basically be it. So I can actually jump to the tasks part. And here's the actual fulfillment of that workflow where it sends a notification. And instead, I can actually tell it that I want to call a script instead. So this is the new preview feature. And I'm going to just name it call a script. Sorry for the caps lock. There we go. And the table, everything's the same. Now I just have to select the AppScript project that I created. So I click on that, that opens up the Drive Picker, and there is my project ready to go. So now that it's selecting the project, it's going to fetch any available functions to run. And because I gave it that one function in my AppScript project, I should be able to see that. So there we go, function name. I'm going to select the log this along with the message parameter, right? And now I just have to specify what is the message that I want to send. So I can say, hello from AppSheet. And that evaluates. Once it evaluates, it says, yes, this is a valid expression in AppSheet. Incidentally, if I wanted to actually put in data from the backend sheet, I could do that using an expression there. But for this case, I'll just keep it simple. And let's go ahead and save the app. And now in order to trigger this automation, all I have to do is select any record and update it. So for example, if I select this record and I click on the edit link and I say maybe I want to change the color, change one of the options there for the t-shirts, and I'll click save. And this is actually going to fire the automation, which should then be calling my AppScript project. So to see if it actually executed, let's go back to the AppScript environment and I click on the executions tab here. And then there we go. I can see that I have this log this function that's being called. And there we go. We have the message that's coming from AppSheet. So there you can see in just a few minutes, I was able to create a new AppScript project, create a new function, and then I could go in and create a new AppSheet application and connect the two together. All right. So hopefully that was rather easy to do. Okay, for step 2 of the workshop, what I'll be doing is I'm going to be exploring the AppScript AppSheet examples project a bit. And you'll see once I get started, I'll have a couple of different examples to choose from for connecting AppSheet to AppScript. All right. So first off, to get going here, I'm going to make a copy of this AppScript examples project that we actually published a while back. And so this takes us over to the examples project. And I'm going to click on the copy icon. And this will give us our own copy of this project. And so I'm going to rename it something like, I'll just call it something simple like my new AppSheet examples, blah, blah, blah project, right? So here we go. Now we have this project. We have a number of different functions that we can try. So before I get started and switch back to AppSheet, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the Run button, and that will trigger the authorization step. And so because the actual functions are attempting to use like email, Drive, Calendar, and such, I have to do like an authorization step where I review the permissions. So we'll give that a chance to run. And so this is common with AppScript projects. And so there's the different services that I want to be able to use from this project. I'll click Allow, and then we're good to go. So now I have a new AppScript project. So now I can go back to my AppSheet app that I created earlier, and then I can point it to this new project, right? So instead of the old Hello World that I created on the fly, let's point it to the new project. In this case, it's my new AppSheet AppScript examples project. I'll click Select. And then once that evaluates, I can then choose a function here. I'm going to start off with the Create Calendar function. And then instead of having just a simple one of like the title, I want it to actually be like my awesome new event for that. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to select a date format, which I think should be okay. So I'm going to select this format, but I'm going to update it a little bit. So let's go over here. I'll click on the start time. So I'm basically specifying the start time and the end time for my event that I'm going to create in my calendar. So I'm going to select April 6th. I'll put 19, so it's like a 24-hour clock there. That evaluates to correct. And let's set the end time to, instead of the 19th, let's do it at the 20th, all right? So I'll click Save, and there we go. So now I have my new call to one of the new example functions, which is to create a calendar event. And so I just happen to have my Google Calendar right here. There's no events, so we're good to go. I can go back to the AppSheet app. I can click on one of my records to trigger the automation. So all I have to do is just change some of the data as before. I click Save. And then that will trigger the actual automation. So let's go over to my calendar. And there we go. So we have this new awesome event that's scheduled for tomorrow. Cool. So that was easy. So let's go ahead and move on to a next step. So in this case, I'm going to select the Create Doc example. So if I take a quick look at the Create Doc example, which is right here, all I have to do is just provide a doc name. So that's pretty easy, and it's actually going to create a new document entirely within AppScript, right? So to do that, let me just go ahead and I'll retain the same project, but now I'm going to select the Create Doc, and let's give it a new doc name. So let's say my new awesome doc. Close the quotes. We'll leave it as such. We'll hit Save. And then, as before, all I have to do here, actually, I'll go ahead and save the app for save measure. And let's go here. Let's click on the edit record. And I'll change the color, hit Save. And I go to the project. And this one, I have to actually consult the executions. And here we go. We have my executions, and there we have the Create Doc. So this is actually putting out a little bit of code into the logs, and it lets us know that we actually created a new document. And I'll just open up that document, and there we go. So that's the new document that we created from AppScript via a call from AppSheet. All right. So pretty straightforward stuff. Let's go ahead and move on to another function. So if you recall from our examples here, I'm going to do the create sheet call. So if I switch back over to our code, just to have a quick look at the code, and I scroll down to create sheet, here's another function, and I just have to give it a sheet name, right? So let's just set that up. I go to my application. Instead of create doc, I'm going to do create sheet. All right, and let's give it a sheet name. So pretty straightforward. Click save. I'll save it over here as well. And let's go ahead and update a record. Hit save. And that will trigger the execution. So I go over to my logs. And once the sheet has been created, I should see a new update to my logs. And there we go. So it's still blinking, so I know that it's functioning. I'll give it a second or two to finish up. And now it's completed. I pop that open, and now we have a new sheet named My New Sheet. And I can open up the link here. And there we go. So it executed just like we expected with that same new that customized sheet name. All right. So this is all pretty straightforward. Let's do one more example just to kind of hit home the different types of scripts that we can call. So if I go back to my code here, I see also that we have a create slide deck. So this one's a little bit more involved. It'll have a deck title, a slide image URL, and a slide title. So these are some things that I'm going to specify in the parameters, right? So it just so happens that I have some information here. The most important thing is the image link here. And I'm actually going to copy that image link. I won't show it to you just yet. I'll leave that as a little surprise towards the end, right? So to do the update, let's go back into our application. Instead of creating the sheet, I'm going to create the slide deck. And I'm going to say, I don't know, my awesome new deck. So that would be the first parameter. This one is an important parameter for the actual slide image that I'm going to insert, and a slide title. This is a nice puppy. And I'll leave it at that. All right. So click save. And we will again trigger the automation just by updating the record. I'll do maybe some quick updates. And I'll click save. Now let's return back to our AppScript project and check the executions. And here we go. We got the create slide deck. It's already completed. And so I'll just hit the refresh and we should see our output. Once it's finished, there we go. Successfully created a new slide deck here. So let's take a look. There's my awesome new slide deck. And then, ta-da, we have a new slide there with our image of a puppy. Cool. So hopefully this kind of gives you an idea of how you can work with AppScript and AppSheet together by using the new AppSheet AppScript connector. Okay, so before concluding, there's one final function that I want to show you in the examples project. So let's scroll down to the bottom and you'll see here we have this create and send document function. So let's go ahead and call that one from AppSheet. And as you can see in the code here, it's actually going to create a new document and then it's going to send an email with that document attached to it. All right, so let's switch back over to AppSheet. And instead of the create slide deck call, I'll call the create and send document. And I'll pop open the expression editor, a new document. I'll just give it a simple title. And that evaluates correctly. And then here I just put some example text here. Here is a new email with new document. All right, that will be it. I'll click save once that evaluates. And we should be good. There we go. I'll click save over here. And incidentally, I have my Gmail window up here. And so I'm going to use that to see if my document was created. All right, so let's go ahead and update our record, or change the color or whatever. I'll click save, and that should kick off our automation again. And now I'm going to be focused on Gmail, and we'll just wait for the incoming update. There we go. And here's the new document, and we actually have a link to our new document as well. So I click on the new document, and there we go. So that's our actual document that we got created by calling this particular function. Thanks for joining this workshop on AppSheet's new AppScript connector. For more information on this important new feature, check out the link below. And thanks for watching.